going into litigation. So the legal frameworks helps actually to solve these issues, or at least provide a pathway to resolution. Contracts need to be bankable, and that's very, very important because the large projects will require funding between debt and equity both. And clearly, it's, it has to define the responsibilities of private and public sector. And the clauses such as force measure, termination provision, dispute resolution terms need to be clearly articulated, because this will, in most likely cases, are going to be exercised at some point of time. But World Bank, ICSID, provides the best practices, so I think that can be leveraged. In private sector perspective, economics is obviously very, very important. As I said, it should be looked at as cost optimization rather than lowest cost. And there, the due diligence cost is quite significant. We need to acknowledge that if such projects do not have a proper due diligence, the risk is even higher. So therefore, we see the degree of expenses on the preparatory stage vary. For advanced market, it's probably around 3% because it has a lot of information in the public domain with data and everything. It is between 3 to 5% for developing countries which are under development, and for the developing countries, it can go up to 5 to 10%. So actually, this is quite significant, but this is upfronted. Therefore, this needs to be taken into consideration. And the expectation from the project, for the private sector, is about 15%. So that is also need to be considered. For return on equity will need to be 15%. And these things are important, but that makes it bankable as well. And the expertise and the knowledge of the advisors are very critical, and therefore we need to really choose the best, best consultants and advisors to run this project. So obviously these projects are big, therefore a single bank cannot finance, therefore there will be requirement of multi-bank and risk participation, different arrangement. We'll talk about it later as well. So execution is, is one very, very important perspective, and that's where most of the cases, there are failures, especially in the governance in procurement, then the data availability. For Bangladesh, it is also a challenge. I think it's getting better, but I think if you look at the initial projects where, our moderator mentioned about the mixed experience, because the data was not available, therefore the way it was projected, it turned out to be different, and the longer it took, the scenario got changed as well. So I think that's where it's important to ensure that the feasibility is done based on actual data. Project management and implementation, as I mentioned, the more time it takes, it adds to the cost, it actually reduces ROE. Therefore, it's important to ensure the tightness of the project. You can refer back to the point that I mentioned about the Greece project, which didn't do well because it went, there's a cost overrun and time overrun. All those actually are detrimental to project successes. And timelines, interim milestones are very important to monitor and very tightly managed, so that it can be implemented in the right manner. Now, these large projects will obviously require funding, and this will come from, and when I say bankability, it's not only bank funded, it's also about any financier, whether it's an investment or lender or in capital market products, right? So I think it's important for us to ensure that the issues that a lender, investor will look at for a project like this are very important to see the compensation on termination, if there is any termination, how it's going to be addressed. The step-in rights, if the partner, let's say private sector partner, is unable to execute, then there has to be a provision for another entity to step in and complete the project. The guarantees and the collateral. I think collateral is one of the bigger issues because, at times the project framework is such that the collateral, the underlying assets of the project cannot be collateralized. So that needs to be replaced by something, risk participation or guarantees, which can actually play a role. So these are the thing that is important. I think capital market is a very, very important area, and this actually creates opportunity for many other industries such as pension fund, insurance, life insurance funds and others, because these projects are longer term. Therefore, longer term projects will require a longer term funding basis, where current structure of commercial bank deposits are more than 90% short term. These are not feasible. When the capital market grows with the support of investors like pension fund, life insurance fund, sovereign wealth fund, these actually will create base for investment. And this can be structured in a manner where the construction risk is managed by a commercial loan, and then once the project is up and running, then we can go for longer term capital market products like fixed income products like bonds, sukuk and others. That actually reduces the risk for the long term investors because the construction risk is already addressed. So I think there are many ways to do that, and you can also have wraps, whether it's PRI, the political risk coverage wrap, or any risk participation for multilaterals, which reduces the risk and gets a better pricing. So there are many ways to structure this. In terms of challenges and recommendation, as I mentioned, access to land is extremely critical. I will not really go into detail because we have esteemed panelists who can talk about it. Ambassador Nihat Kobi will probably talk about it. The implementation capacity, because actually running the project requires a definite specific skill set. The capacity building is extremely important. And on that particular one, from the PPP side, one of the recommendations I will have is that at least have a duration, because if there's too frequent changes in the PPP, then you lose the memory and the knowledge and expertise. So it's probably recommendation for government to consider that whether it can be a bit longer term appointment than short term. Next is about the bankability I talked about. I won't elaborate on it. And then the recommendation that when you actually go for this, launch, he said it can be long, as I said, if you are starting from scratch, it can go up to 30 months, 2.5 years, 3 years, but it can also be shortened. And I've already talked about the financing options, so I won't really talk about that. Let me go into the reason I'm saying that it can be shortened. See, the power projects in Bangladesh has not been tracked under PPP. But these are actually PPP. If you look at the contribution from public sector is to provide the political commitment, the recognized legal framework, the bankability and time specific execution. So if you look at the political commitment, that these are IAs, implementation agreements signed actually based on the authority of the president. So that's a strong commitment. Look at the legal framework because this PPP is IPP and the power purchase agreements have been tested over 20-25 years and without major concern, because very clearly laid down. I'm talking about the not the renewable one, but the previous one. Renewable, I think there's still a requirement of adjustment because it's not necessarily same as a fuel-based power plants or gas-based power plants. The bankability, the capacity payment that is there in the IPP is actually, in a way, kind of a VGF type. It's not a VGF, but in a way that it assures you a minimum payment. That makes it bankable. And the timely execution is very, very critical because there is LDs if you're not delivering within the timeline. So I think it actually features, most of the things, critical success factors that's required to make a PPP successful. Because the framework is tested, it does not take 36 months or 30 months, right? So this can be a model that can be replicated and similar projects can be done. So which means that we don't necessarily need to do everything from scratch. If there are multiple projects in the pipeline, we can have a kind of a base structure. We can replicate this and it will be faster. First time it may take longer, but eventually it will be much faster. So I won't talk about the strategic goals because our moderator has already covered this. But the point to note here is there's $192 billion of investment gap, and that cannot be expected to be funded by government. So it has to be either private sector or PPP. And PPP becomes more and more relevant because many of these projects may not be feasible on its own because there's a development angle, there's a social cause. So those are actually areas where we need to actually focus on. I talked about this, the ADB's PPP monitor, where Bangladesh ranks better than APEC countries. So which means that the basic regulatory framework is there. It's about execution and fine-tuning and ensuring these are actually land in a way that it's expected to be. There are 77 projects, I heard 79, maybe my data is a bit dated, but 77 projects with $22.8 billion. So there's huge opportunity space. But if you look at the country's requirement and the alignment to the country's priorities, you find that there are significant opportunities to work on the logistics. If we really want to double our exports from 50 to 100, we really need to ensure the logistics support is there, because it actually impacts the viability of the export and becoming competitive. We know that national logistics policy is being framed, and all of us in the private sector, especially Bill and other chambers, are working with it. Therefore, we believe that we will have a policy which will be conducive for a PPP framework. Second sector I would talk about is healthcare. There are $5 billion medical tourism that goes out of the country. We can definitely replace it by having this infrastructure locally. This will require support, and PPP is an ideal model for that. We can get those investors to come in partnership with the local investors and government to actually execute PPP projects in healthcare. Education, if we want to achieve a knowledge-based economy by 2041, there is no other option but to focus and invest on education. So this is where we need to actually focus. ICT is a big sector. We are talking about or exploring whether semiconductor is an area where we can actually explore. Obviously, fabrication is extremely expensive. It won't happen in the first phase, but can happen about the designing and validation. That will require a lot of resources with IT skills and expertise. And there are regional successful cases in Philippines, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and resilient infrastructure so that it actually aligns with our sustainability agenda and SDG goals. So these are the things I want to conclude with. Before I actually summarize, I want to conclude with one experience I had when I was in Philippines. This is actually a school project. Government of Philippines realized that they need to increase the reach of schools to public. Therefore, they were contemplating to implement about 1750 schools across Philippines. So the structure that I talked about, initially it was a construction financing by a local company called Megawide. And then once the project is completed, there was a COC, certificate of completion was given. This was accepted and guaranteed by the government of Philippines, which is an investment rated country. Therefore, subsequently, these receivables were securitized and the bond was issued, and it's been, almost 8 years now. No problem with the payment. It is actually doing very well. This is one of the success stories I wanted to share from my own personal experiences. Just to summarize, there is a $192 billion opportunity waiting for the investors to come in. Secondly is the PPP can leverage the private enablers and the public sector expertise. Project design and bankability is extremely important, so we should not cut corners to compromise on the quality. It is about optimization, not about the lowest cost. Mobilize institutional investors in capital market development. I talked about capital market development is absolutely critical for any infrastructure development. And the governance. If the governance fails, the project will fail for sure. With that, I'll conclude my remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation. It combines beautifully cases and insights, and we can smell that it comes from a practitioner and his experience. So thank you for that. Let us now move on to our eminent panelists. And firstly, I would like to go to PPP Authority, Mr. Abul Bashar, Director General at PPP Authority, and he has been a person who is with the program almost from the beginning. For 12 years now. So we were discussing change of persons within the government, which makes a problem. Well, not in this case. He has been there for 12 years, and so he knows all the challenges and good things. So we would like to know from you, what initiatives have PPP Authority taken in recent years to facilitate public-private partnership? Let me put both of my queries together, and you can answer, as you like. And what are Bangladesh's strengths and what benefits are offered to the investors in PPP projects? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And please allow me to remind our eminent panelists that we are working on time, and so we have 7 minutes each for our discussion.
Thank you very much, our learned moderator. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, Honorable Chair of this session, learned moderator, expert panelist, distinguished delegates and audience, Assalamu alaikum. Special thanks to keynote presenter. Is not so long paper, but everything is covered by his keynote. And I want to, before one to my question answer, I just keep 3 points from keynote paper. One is a independent feasibility study, and another is the competitive bidding. These important 2 points already exist in our PPP program. And I have noted 3 points again is successful PPP. This keynote shows that 3 important points is one is political commitment, another is legal framework, and ensure bankability. Very important. Is political commitments. This PPP program in Bangladesh, absolutely present government brainchild and initiative. This is the message. And legal framework. We, in Bangladesh PPP program, we have a robust regulatory framework, already recognized our multilateral, bilateral friends, and our different type of partners and investors. And to ensure bankability, it is very important. What we are doing, I will explain later. And I am going to our learned moderator's question. What initiative PPP are taking recent time? Actually, PPP, based on the PPP projects. That is why if PPP projects bankable, marketable, and accessible to the investors or fulfill our government conception, need a quality feasibility study. PPP initiatives is, we have the opportunity to create a panel of transaction advisor. We are doing. And we are working the national and international banks, financial institution to create financing market of PPP projects. We have signed G2G, government to government projects initiative. This is the unique arrangement in Bangladesh because we need more investment. We have signed 6 countries MAUs like Japan, Korea, Singapore, Dubai, and Saudi Arabia, Denmark. We are continuously having working and seminar with our stakeholders to promote PPP locally and globally. And we are working with development partners to see how can combat impact to climate change through PPP. We are also attending international events to promote our projects. And we are arranging training and for the officials of government and non-government to better understanding of PPP program. We have, within this time, our journey is not so long. We started 2012. And within this time, we create a strong project pipeline. Our investment size is over $38 million, $38 billion. And this is our recent action. And my next question is the strength and benefits, maybe. And as per strength, earlier I said this is the present government initiatives. Able leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister, Sheikh Hasina, PPP, we have a board of governors. Honorable Prime Minister is still the chairperson of board of governors. This is our main strength. To make it success, we need the political commitments. Honorable Prime Minister is still the chairperson of board, so no need to discuss more about political commitment. And our another strength is robust regulatory framework. We have PPP Act, and it is accepted all our investors. We have procurement guideline, unsolicited guideline, and a standard forms and process framework. This is our strength and benefits. Yes, two types of benefits I can explain. One from investors, another from government side or people, what they are thinking. And government side, the government giving some provisions, that means viability gap financing, one of the main tools, incentive tools. And we are enjoying government page PPP, mixed page PPP, and the user search PPP. Minimum revenue guarantee already exists in our PPP contract. And minimum traffic guarantee, tax holiday, exempt of VAT, tax, etc. And we are practicing the global best practice. We are following our standard documents and model documents also. And for the benefits for nation, obviously better service and development of government asset, job creation, and overcome the budgetary constraints. Learned moderator are looking me, that is why I have to conclude. And thank you very much for hearing me.
Thank you, Mr. Bashar, for your wonderful response. And you highlight the political commitment as well as the incentives and benefits and strength of the way we are preparing projects through independent consultants. We now move on to Mr. Takeo Koike, Director, Asian Development Bank. Well, Asian Development Bank has been a very strong partner in the development of PPP in the country, both in terms of technical support and transaction advisory support. In both the wings, it has been working quite intensely with the PPP authority till now. So it would be great to know from you, Mr. Takeo Koike, what makes Bangladesh an attractive country for PPP investment projects, in your view, in your experience, and what are ADB's plans to support the PPP program in near future? And you two have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, DG Nafiu. And then, yeah, it's working. Good morning, everyone. It is my greatest pleasure to be here and then share, these discussions with the very distinguished guests and then panelists. Okay, it has to come closer. All right, thank you so much. Again, good morning to you. On this question, I would probably start by saying that for us, Bangladesh is the busiest country for us in this region. and then I keep coming back to Dhaka. Actually, this is the third visit in the last 3 months, and then I think it will continue. The reason why we are so busy here as a kind of PPP advisors is, as many of our colleagues have already mentioned, there's a good history, and then sort of institutional or sort of framework, and then setup, which basically enables PPP in a kind of smoother way. ADB has been assisting the country to develop this framework law, and then also procedures, and then provided capacity support to basically make those project processing easier. At the same time, we have been trying to build a good pipeline of PPP projects in the market, because as you can imagine, the investors will be more interested if they see future opportunities in this market. So it is important that we have more than single project opportunities, and then provide certain kind of prospect and then good future for investors and then also lenders. In this regard, we have already closed 2 road PPPs in Bangladesh, but are now working on the third one, so that we can actually standardize those documents and then procedures, and then make a kind of cases in the road PPP sector. By that, people will get familiar with the asset class as an asset class, and then maybe more comfortable to come in and then invest. That's one approach. In this respect, we are also looking at expanding it to different sectors too. So right now, we are in preliminary discussions on, for instance, logistics, healthcare, and then also urban infrastructure, including some of the economic zone related transactions. So those are the areas where we hope we can just continue, and then build a kind of good cases as we did in the road PPP sector. In addition, as a bank, we have been also assisting the system so that PPP projects can benefit from the long-term local currency financing, which is very important to basically, avoid the currency mismatch between revenues and then also financing. We have supported BIFFL and then IDCO so that they can provide long-term financing. And then also even ADB itself is trying to develop its own local currency financing capacity through perhaps cross-currency swap or offshore bond issue in Bangladesh Dhaka. So those are the kind of attempts that we are pursuing. Down the line, we of course we have done reasonably good job, I suppose, and then we are very proud of it. But at the same time, we feel that we could do even more, and then we are very keen to continue this way. In this respect, lastly, I just want to touch on one kind of broader perspective. But we tend to see increasingly, with our experience, we see that one PPP project is not really a kind of standalone. It has all linkages within the sector, and then it will be governed by sector framework, and then regulations, and then also efficiency of other associated infrastructure. So as an ADB, we have a benefit of combining these government support, PPP support, and then non-sovereign support. So through those different modalities, we try to approach the issues broadly, and then come up with solutions more comprehensively, so that each of those projects, perhaps one of them could be PPP, could actually benefit, and then come up with a solution for each of those issues. So that's the kind of overall approach that we try to do. And then again, we are very keen to continue development of the PPP program in Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Many of the queries, questions that we are putting forward here may seem at times overlapping and similar, but actually that is intended, because of the viewpoints these diverse panelists carry. So when we say what are the strengths of Bangladesh, the way a PPP authority will be saying that maybe Mr. Shafiqul Islam Akan, COO of Dhaka Bypass Expressway Development Company Limited, who is actually working to implement a PPP project in Bangladesh, he will have different views. So, I hope you understand and appreciate such different viewpoints. And we would come to Mr. MD Shafiqul Islam Akan now. And we would be very happy to know from you, in your experience in implementing a PPP project, what are the strengths that Bangladesh PPP offers. And at the same time, obviously there are areas of improvement, there always is, and we'd like to hear about some of the areas of improvement for successful completion or operation of projects that in your view you have observed. Thank you. You also have 7 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Dhaka Bypass Expressway Development Company Limited, and this is the first road sector PPP project in Bangladesh. And the contract was signed at the later part, maybe in December 2018, and I'm with the company from 2021. It's very difficult to express all the experiences by this time, because we have had so many hurdles that we have overcome by this time. And then fortunately now we are on to our business. And as the moderator has requested, from our experience, from the experience of the private investor point, the strength which Bangladesh has, that the sort of enabling environment through regulation and also